Hello and welcome to the first episode of Elevate, an innovative new series presented by HCL Technologies. My name is Brett Morgus and it is a pleasure to join you as the host for this series. Today's fireside chat will focus on business resilience, a topic that has been very much top of mind for many organisations over the last year. Deloitte has named resilience the word for 2021. It's certainly what we've all needed to get through the last year, and will be just as relevant this year and into the foreseeable future. 2021 will require resilience and adaptation, and that will cover all areas of an organisation, from their processes, their people, and their use of technology. Today's conversation with the leaders from Elders Limited and HCL Technologies will be a great insight as to what areas will be top of mind as organisations look to continually review what they do and ensure they are as resilient as they can be. HCL Technologies is a leading global technology company that helps global enterprises reimagine their businesses through digital transformation and empower them with technology for the next decade today. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our panelists for today's chat. Our first guest is Mark Allison, Managing Director and CEO at Elders Limited. Elders works with Australian farmers to help them be amongst the most productive farmers in the world by providing access to products, marketing options, and specialist technical advice across a number of relevant product categories. Mark joined Elders in December 2009 and was appointed Managing Director and CEO in May 2014. Between July 2013 and May 2014, he also served as Elders Executive Chairman and then Chairman. His 35-year agribusiness career spans manufacturing, supply, and distribution businesses. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Great to be here.
And our next guest is Swapan Johri, Corporate Vice President, Asia Pacific and Middle East at HCL Technologies. Swapan is a key member of HCL's corporate leadership team, holding executive responsibility for the Asia Pacific and Middle East region. He has been an integral part of building HCL's various global service lines, with a personal focus on innovative transformational IT services in several domains. Swapan, a big welcome to you.
Thanks, Brett. Great to be here. Great to be in conversation with Mark.
Excellent. Before I launch into the chat, a note for our audience. If you'd like a question asked of our panel today, please use the chat function on your webpage. Also remember to add your name when submitting your question, and we'll answer them as a follow-up from today's session. So let's kick off. And as we've come out of 2020, one of the main topics of conversation has been around resilience in terms of what it means to both public and private organisations. To start our conversation today, can I ask both of you what resilience means to you, especially in the light of the last 12 months? Mark, let's start with you.
Okay, thanks. It's a great question, isn't it? I think for me, and particularly being an agricultural business, resilience is around the calmness and the clarity. I always talk within Elders about having a low pulse rate and being very, very clear on your purpose and what you want to achieve. I think it's quite funny in a lot of ways because with our people, particularly with our farmers across Australia, when we talked about isolation and social distancing, they just laugh and say, well, that's what we signed up for when we signed up to be a farmer. So there's no change. But I think that calmness and clarity is really important. I've been in a few discussions, public discussions, where people said to me, particularly early on with COVID, what have you, how you changed strategy? What have you done differently? And to me, without being overly smug, I mean, my sense is that if you have to change things under crisis, then there may be a problem with your business model or your strategy. And so I think being clear and calm is quite critical. And that's how I would see resilience.
And Swapan, what about yourself?
Actually, I mean, that's a great question to begin with, the very definition of resilience. As an engineer by qualification, I'm tempted to, give you the physics definition of resilience, but probably that's not so much relevant in our context. I think for me, when we talk of resilience, there are actually two visuals that come to my mind for the most part or most often. One's from nature. I mean, it's like, trees that just sway in the wind. And they sometimes might lose a branch in a storm, but they continue to do what they are meant for, right? I mean, provide fruits, shelter, right? So that's like, to me, a visual on resilience. And the other one is more heroic, and probably I take it as an example of, if I coin a term called situational resilience, is like, the 2009 Miracle on Hudson, right? I think the pilots would have had a tremendous presence of mind. There would have been huge teamwork at play in just 15 minutes. But end of the day, I think what was most important is that I think they all stuck to a core objective, which is about landing passengers safely. It didn't matter. It wasn't a runway, it was water, right? But I think that probably is the visuals on resilience that comes to my mind. Bringing it into 2020 and the pandemic, I think it was all over the place. Look at administration, trying to ensure that everybody meets their basic needs, healthcare workers, doctors, working in an overwhelmed system, right? Without maybe firm protocols, and still getting patients to recover, come back to health, right? I think those are examples of resilience. And of course, we have our business examples. I think the best of them that I see are where companies, organizations just extended their core capability to do something else. I mean, that's not what they were doing, but they just look at their core capability and did something else. I think in Australia, you have examples of a mining manufacturing company talking of making ventilators. Finally, you didn't use them. I mean, I heard this in the launch, part of the series. You have people making masks, sanitizers, none of which they had done before. I think that to me is what is resilience.
You both made some great points. And Swapan, as one of the leaders at HCL, did you find that your own business was as resilient as you'd hoped, or were there areas that you found that weren't quite as resilient?
Okay, so I think you'll have to break this down into looking at the dimensions on which we were resilient or not, and I guess again that would essentially mean looking at who are our primary stakeholders. I would think customers, employees, investors, and partners. If you take them as primary stakeholders, and if I look at how the year has been, and we will end a financial year coming March, I think we haven't slipped a commitment. And to me, that is what is very important. Yes, we may have gone and looked at alternate ways to execute something. Here and there, a timeline change. I mean, I have examples in my own region where we've had a timeline change. But did we slip a commitment to any of these stakeholders? I think the answer is no. Did we do better than usual? I mean, that's obviously, quarter-wise, it can vary, region-wise, it can vary. But overall, I think, we came through the pandemic, not just surviving, but thriving, I mean, as our CEO puts it. And I think that's been really resilient. It's always easy to look at things in hindsight and comment, and but if I go back and think about it, there's a lot of time that we saved by working from home, right? I mean, commute hours, maybe some other time that when you go to the office you probably lose. Did we invest all of this time harmoniously into the future, or doing something, or preparing for ahead? Maybe we could have done better. I think, we could have possibly, and maybe this is not just about HCL, but in general, I think we were all living at the present and kind of preparing for the past, but were we investing a lot into the future? Maybe not. I think that's where I feel we could have probably done better.
Thanks, Swapan. And Mark, what about your experiences heading up Elders over the last year?
Yeah, no, I could only have praise for our clients, the farming community. I mean, we were coming out of a worst drought in the east coast of Australia in 100 years. We came out of our bushfires. We had floods in northern Australia. So, I mean, this sort of crisis, although the basis of it is quite different, the pandemic, this sort of crisis is pretty much what agriculture is about, I think. The team across Australia responded very, very quickly. Because, I mean, the core of, like, 182 years later for Elders, the core of the DNA is around our client. our customer and our local communities. And so we responded very, very quickly. I had many discussions that were just so informing and inspiring. I spoke, and the idea that generationally there's less resilience today with millennials versus previous generations. I mean, I had a discussion with a young woman who I think thought that I knew the background, and I didn't. I just rang at random, and I said, "Hey, Rachel, Mark Allison, just checking in on you. How are you handling the lockdown, etc." And she said, "Oh no, it's becoming real now because I identified the body today, and now I realise that Mum is dead, and we're now working through how we can only have 10 at the funeral, and so one of us is going to act as one of the officials. So that means we can have 9 and an official." And she told me the story of her mother who was in a car accident the week before. And I was listening to the story thinking, wow, my whole generational perspective has now been blown, and people are just good people, and under crisis, they help each other. So I couldn't be prouder, to be honest. I didn't have one discussion that didn't just make me sit down afterwards thinking, what the hell, for anyone to think they're doing it tough here. That they really need to put themselves in other people's shoes. On the business side, record profitability for the business, all-time record. Injuries, two injuries down from 34 6 years before. So from a key metric viewpoint, record share price, from 50 cents 6 years ago to $12.26. So it's really interesting because, I mean, these sort of situations do bring different things out of different people. And I think for me as a leader of the business, again, that they were, I mean, I got lots of feedback about, not so much support. In fact, I had people calling me from the bush saying, "Hey, just want to check in to make sure you're okay." So culturally, I think it brought out the best of the business.
Yeah, I think you touched on a particularly important point, which is it certainly brought out, in a lot of cases, the best of who we can be, and perhaps brought down some of those barriers between your work life and your home life, and got people to understand a lot more about their work colleagues, perhaps even more so if things had stayed the same.
I think that's right, and I think it's an odd perspective, I know, but from my perspective, I think that 2020 has been one of the most enlightening, self-understanding periods of my life, and I've seen it with the management team and also way through the business that people have reflected, taken time. It's cleared away a lot of the smoke screen of routine and travel. So as I say, I mean, it's an odd thing to say, but if you look at the best in a situation, horrible situation, and I've been really, really proud of Australian agriculture, the local communities through regional rural Australia, and the oldest people.
No, absolutely. Sorry, go ahead, Swapan.
No, I was just saying that I think for Mark, it was as you were talking about it, right? Bushfires were just preceded, and I don't know if what was worse or what was in from a learning perspective what was better, but I think it's almost been like one thing after the other.
Yeah, which has the potential to really knock people around and knock communities around. But it tends to go the other way. I mean, but once you get away of the kind of the anonymous inner city areas where it's dog eat dog, and big city areas, and people are people, humanity's humanity, and I really believe that, and it's been shown in spades in the last 12 months.
No, absolutely, and just to touch on the comment you raised, Mark, about the fact that not only do we have to deal with some of the, I guess, the negative impacts of the pandemic, but like any other crisis, there's often a set of opportunities that come up as a result of needing to deal with these sorts of challenges. in terms of elders, were there any opportunities that allowed elders to, enhance or tweak their business model as a result of that, or were, because of the nature of the business of your business, resilience is very much built into to what you and your clients do?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, it's deep-rooted culturally. this whole idea of being stoic. Yeah, as an example, from 2 years ago, one of our guys gets his finger almost cut off in a gate with some cattle, and as you'd expect, wraps it up and says, "Okay, I'll sort the cattle and then I'll sort the finger." I mean, this is and it's very deeply customer first. Very, very deeply customer first. But I think of the opportunities. It's for us. It was the story of elders in the last 7 years, certainly from when I was chairman, and then as we kind of moved forward, was around a company that's almost bankrupt, and it needs to stay alive to pay its people and not get rid of a whole heap of people. And so we've had 6 years of running to try to rebuild reputation, rebuild profitability, rebuild credibility, and I think with all that momentum, this forced the whole business just to stop, think, reflect. And so I think the tweaking that's occurred has been a mental and behavioural tweaking, not so much a business model tweaking. And I think it really has deeply influenced how we're going forward now with our third 8-point plan. And what I mean mostly is, rather than being too focused on surviving and then growing to get credibility, we were able to stop and think, okay, we're not in that mode now. Now we're a highly profitable, well-respected business, and our systems modernisation that we're putting in place really has come out of this period of reflecting, thinking, so where do we want to be in the next 5 years, rather than it's almost a step change from survival mode that's occurred, and it's all between the ears, zero doubt. So in terms of tweaking the business model, I mean, we were not so much, but in terms of behaviour and thinking, very much so.
No, absolutely. It sounds like there's been some, it's a really strong business and really strong people. Swapan HCL is a global business which covers many countries within your region. Were there instances where there were some tweaks or changes made to your business model to contend with the crisis?
So, Brett, I think very much like what Mark said, fundamentally the business model did not change. But there are aspects and parts of how we worked, how we responded, how we planned for keeping things going on and doing better, of course, underwent some changes. And for us at HCL, I think, as you rightly said, global business, in essentially providing IT services, technology services, and in the current context, digital acceleration. In many ways, the pandemic actually kind of created a platform for us to do more of what we were already on to. Right. So it was like you can say a tweaking or a magnifying of the business model, in a way. But there are certain things, at least in our region, at least handle Asia Pacific and Middle East. One of the things we had been doing very, very systematically was to be more high touch, than remote. Now that unfortunately had to be slowed down, right? We had to make it even more remote, at least in the current phase, right? Because you could not have been high touch. Hiring was difficult on site. You couldn't travel people in. So we've done transitions in this period which have been done remote, right? And as I was saying earlier, we stuck to our commitments on dates, etc. But I think that shift is a change that happened. I would say we were fortunate that we were also, while we were working this high touch, and in order to make high touch happen, we were also working on a lot of localization initiatives. So those again got a boost, right? Because now it becomes even more important to do it. And one of the acquisitions that we've done in Australia recently is also keeping that in perspective. So our high touch model towards the end of the year has become back to what we wanted it to be. Earlier we had to make it more remote. about. But the one area which I think we definitely had to change, and now change for good, and now we'll continue with the change, is I think over the last maybe few years or 10 years, we've been, from a solutions perspective of what we propose to our customers, I think we've always been business aligned. I think that's been a central theme for us. But it's gone from being business aligned to being business driven now, right? So our solution today starts with thinking about what is the business impact, what is the business outcome, what can we do for the business, and therefore look at what the solution will be. It's not technology up kind of a model, right? Ultimately, it is about a technology solution, but the thought process, as Mark was saying, it's all between the ears. So your mindset is to move into a completely different thought process there.
No, absolutely, and one common thread that's come out of the discussion with both of you has been, I guess, the impact of your people throughout this time. And one of the areas that the pandemic has driven, or it needs to have been seen to be driven, is the collaboration both within an organisation but also externally with an organisation's ecosystem of partners and stakeholders. And that collaboration has seen organisations not just get through the challenges of the last year, but also strengthen the required resilience within an organisation. Mark, you've touched on about how Elders is a very diverse business, both functionally but also geographically around Australia. Has there been any effort to, further cultivate and enhance that collaboration, both internally and externally with your partners and stakeholders?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's our natural style at any rate. But I think on the basis of communication and engagement, it's certainly been another highlight. I mean, as the leader of the business, I ramped it up significantly with my team and a team down. And the teams down, and also with my multiple phone calls. And I also, as I was isolated in New South Wales for quite a period of time, my field trips became New South Wales only. And I said, at the beginning of it, that I'll know every Elders person in New South Wales by name at the end of this, because I just randomly dropped in on branches as well, and just walked in, and I loved an experience in the Mudgee branch where I walked in, and they stood up from their desk, and one of them looked at me and says, "Hi, Mark." Because it seemed like that's who I was. But I think with collaboration, there's another part of it which is a different facet. It's a different dimension, and that is around the strong, clear leadership. And people in crisis, people want to be told what to do, and they want to feel that someone's in control. And I think we've seen it politically. I mean, without being too political, and I predicted this as soon as this all unfolded. The response to the global financial crisis in central control governments was so much better than democracies, and that's exactly what's happened here. And my fear was that with China lockdowns, it worked. And countries, if you look at the countries where there is central control, it's largely where there's democracies and everyone has a point of view and everyone has a perspective, and it doesn't start from family, local community, and go up. It starts with me and my freedoms, and then goes out. There's a problem under crisis. Under non-crisis, you have the debate as well. But so my sense, it's strong, clear leadership, and with overwhelming communication. So the moment that I stood up and I said, "Hey, first thing is that no one's going to lose their job during this pandemic." So I told the whole business, went on video, told the whole business. So that's the first part. Second part is we all must work together to look after each other and our clients in our local communities and our suppliers and all of our stakeholders. And when 2,500 people across Australia hear that from me and they sense that it's authentic, it actually sets the tone. And there's been the collaboration has been enhanced significantly. And I think, again, people follow leaders. Leaders actually set clear direction and are consistent with their messaging. So I know it's a 101, so hopefully it's not too 101, but to me that was the key. But it's enhanced significantly the collaboration.
Sure. And Swapan, interested in your thoughts about your observations and experiences of collaboration within HCL, but also with our external partners also.
Yeah, I think Mark said it, and I would probably add one more dimension only, which is that besides individual collaborations, what you could also witness was there was collaboration where probably none existed before, right? Because I think if there's one thing that really kept all of us going during the pandemic, and of course even now, not that it is over, is that high level of empathy. Human empathy that got created, and it cut across everything. I mean, it cut across business, cut across countries, cut across any kind of boundaries, and that fostered a very high, degree of collaboration. Further aided by technology, right? I mean, collaboration suddenly became so much more easier. I mean, it's like, click of a button and you're collaborating I mean, that's of course in quotes, but I think it went up tremendously in many ways. And I think that's a learning, and that's something that we should preserve as we go ahead, is what I would say about it.
No, absolutely. And there's also another school of thought that to achieve a level of resilience within an organisation, it requires a balance of managing both short and long-term strategies. Swapan, I'm interested to see whether you agree with this, and are there any examples of such a balance that you can share, either within HCL or from what you've seen from your clients?
So I think, of course, what's long term is quite a function of which business you are in, right, and what stage of business it is in also. But if you're an investment firm or if you're an infrastructure company, then I think it is a long term strategy, right? There's not anything else that you would do for the types of investment firms, but I know you would do that. In our sector, obviously in technology, and for a large part of our client base, it is, I think, a blend of having a strategy and a long-term strategy, as you said. But what is important for them is to be able to execute on that strategy, well. And that execution needs to be flexible, open-minded, adaptable, ears to the ground kind of an execution. I'm not sure if that's what we would call as a short-term strategy, but the execution piece of whatever you stand for and whatever you want to do, did undergo changes during this period, right? And it had to. And I think that's what we talked of as resilience earlier. I think that is what enabled us to keep moving with things. I mean, for example, I just spoke about the change in how you deliver. So, we would deliver more remote than what we had planned, right? I think those are execution strategies that had to be changed. So to that extent, yes, it's a blend of both midterm and long term, and we saw that across our client bases. People would, from an execution perspective, look at doing things differently.
And Mark, what are your thoughts on this particular area of that balance?
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting because I differentiate quite significantly between human resistance, personal resilience, and business resilience. And I think from a business resilience viewpoint, I mean, we've had a strategy going for the last 6 years of we're an aid company, so you have multiple variables, and so for us, we needed to have a cost base and cost and capital base that allowed us to make good money in bad seasons, and so we put that in place in 2014. With a bunch of restructures and the approach to it. From there, we diversified, classic diversification, diversified by, because of our agricultural markets, by geography, by crop segment, by business model, by product and service, now by channel to market through our retail and wholesale. And that actually allows us to make, as I've said for the last number of years, good money in bad seasons and great money in good seasons. So rather than being at the other end where you lose money in bad seasons, you make good money in good seasons, and that's been reflected in the results. So there's that sort of resilience, and that's management. That's a business strategy. and it's quite important. On the personal level, I think the human resilience, is a personal thing, and as leaders within the business, we have a role to develop the areas for more self-understanding, more self-awareness, more knowledge on the business that helps our people become more personally resilient. And so I'm not sure if that's dodging the question, but I do see it in two quite distinct areas.
No, I get it absolutely, and I think it's interesting you touching on the leadership part, and both of you as leaders as we enter 2021. One of the final things I just wanted to ask you is, do you see any particular challenges on the immediate horizon that will test and challenge an organisation's resilience? And do you have any thoughts on how they would be best addressed? So, Mark, I'll let you have a first crack at that one.
Okay. I think there are lots of issues. I mean, because when you and we see it in sport, even though I promised not to raise the cricket, but we see it in sport. I think if you saw the Australian bowlers and their ability to respond and raise to a situation because they were just worn out, right? And it looked like it seemed like it, and I think that's something that we need to watch very carefully, because last year did take a lot out of everybody within the business and our local communities. And when you have multiple years in a row, and 2021 looks like 2020 to me, the way it's rolling out. So I think we're taking having a close look at that. And again, betraying my nationality, on the other side, momentum and confidence, as per the Indian batsman, as we saw through the series, momentum and confidence is also worth a lot. So I'm trying to build on that within the Elders business as well, because we're on a roll. We've had 6 years of record results. We've got great market outlook, but we are putting a systems modernisation project in place, and we are looking at succession in senior management over the next few years. So I think both aspects, I just wanted to be so humble and even-handed by mentioning the cricket.
And Swapan, I'll leave it to you to have the last word on in this particular area.
Thanks, Brett. I think Mark's made a very good point about 2020 and 21. It's the same, and I would probably take it even further. There are aspects of what we've been doing in the world which may go back even before 2022. I mean, an example is cybersecurity. I mean, it's been at the forefront or a key thing for a long time, but towards the end of 2020, it's become so much more prominent. So I think if I look at challenges, and coming from a technology company, that's something which I would really want us all to be aware of, that that threat, managing information risk, mitigating those risks and handling it well is definitely a big challenge that we are walking into as we move into 2021 and as things shape up there. But another thing that I would quickly mention is I heard this in our I think the first video of the series is about ubiquitous technology adoption. So I think the rate at which technology is accelerating, in terms of adoption, is obviously, I mean, as somebody said, it is exponential, but it's basically very, very fast, right? How do you prioritize what's relevant for you? How do you implement it quickly? Are another challenge. And then coming back to probably taking a cue from Mark's point about human resilience, I think I'm a little worried about this, and I'm just stating this here, is I think as we return to office, I mean, different companies, different organizations will have different models, but what looks quite certain is that you will land up with some kind of a hybrid way of working. I mean, work from home, work from office, some kind of a combination of that, right? I think when we do that, or when we get to that new hybrid model, how do we do it without losing the learnings and the good practices that we've all got, in work from home? I mean, trust, empowerment, empathy, collaboration. How do we just keep all of that and ensure that we have a new hybrid way of working? I think that's another challenge that I see. Well, of course, it's a longer list, Brett, but I'll stop here.
No, this conversation's been very valuable, and there's a lot of food for thought for our audience. So, Mark Allison, Swapan Johri, thanks a lot for making the time to have a conversation today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
So that concludes the first episode of HCL's Elevate series. I'd like to thank our guests today, Mark Allison and Swapan Johri. And also thank you for joining us. Please keep an eye out for communications regarding the next episode. Until then, have a wonderful day, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.